Hello, Joel Tadman here on the range at West Hill Golf Club, and today we're taking a look at the new Callaway Rogue drivers. Now these drivers don't replace the Epic line. Epic is staying in the range for 2018, but this new Rogue driver is designed to be more of a simpler offering in terms of slightly less adjustability, but more focused on performance. In fact, Callaway say this driver should perform better than Epic in a lot of different areas. Now, like I mentioned before, there's a less of a focus on adjustability, but they do come in three different heads. We've got the standard head, which I've got here. We've got the Sub-Zero head, which we saw with the Epic range as well. So two weight ports in the front and the back that are interchangeable, adjusting launch and spin and things like that. There's also a draw bias head as well, which while that wasn't available in the Epic, obviously Epic had the sliding weight option, which could give you more draw bias. But in the Rogue range, there is a draw head, which is actually going to give you more draw bias than the Epic in its most draw bias setting, if that makes sense. We'll come on to the Rogue first of all. The technology that features in this driver and the other two driver heads in the Rogue range is jailbreak. We saw it in Epic, but they've actually changed it slightly. They've made the bars here slightly thinner and they're hourglass shape, which Callaway say is going to make them perform even better. The other thing to talk about with this driver is the fact that MOI has gone up, so it's more forgiving than Epic. Callaway have also tweaked their variable face technology, so we've got a new X face here. So they've essentially changed the areas of which the driver is thick and thin in accordance to the way jailbreak performs actually, which is supposed to give you more consistent distances across the face. We've got the same triaxial carbon here on the crown, which saves weight, but you'll notice there's no carbon fibre elements on the sole like we saw with Epic. What that does essentially places more weight lower in the head, which gives lower CG, which means higher launch and lower spin. The other comparison you can make with Epic with Sub-Zero is that actually the Sub-Zero model should not only be more forgiving, but it also should give you more fade bias. So that's the technology. What about the looks of these drivers? Well, that's actually quite a significant change from Callaway compared to Epic, in that the Rogue is significantly longer from front to back, so it's more stretched out compared to the Epic, and then it gives you greater contrast in head size between Sub-Zero and the standard version. So standard version should be more confidence inspiring down by the ball. It's got the same triaxial carbon effect on the crown with the graphics on the back and the speed step behind the face. Actually, the speed step is slightly more subtle on the Rogue compared to Epic. There's just one line either side of the alignment mark compared to two, but otherwise it's quite a similar looking driver other than the colour scheme. We've got this new teal colour compared to the green of Epic. I've been testing the standard driver and the Sub-Zero in both its weight settings, so I've got 3 lots of data to share with you to show the contrast in performance between the two. Tested them on the GC2 launch monitor in indoor conditions using premium golf balls, using my Aldillo Rogue shaft, extra stiff shaft that I was fitted for the Epic driver, so put that in this club head, 10 degrees of loft. We're going to do another video on how Rogue compares to Epic, so make sure you check that out very soon. But in this video we're just going to be talking about Rogue, how it compares between the Sub-Zero and the standard, what kind of performance we've got, and was it any good? So let's delve into the numbers to see what we got. Right, so looking at the GC2 numbers then for the Callaway Rogue and Rogue Sub-Zero driver. Let's start with the Callaway Rogue standard model, and we've got some really good performance to be fair. A ball speed of 153 miles an hour, with a really healthy launch angle. It's probably too high actually, 17.2 degrees, so really getting the ball up in the air nice and easily. But with that low spin combination, 2,100, gave an average carry of 273 yards, so very impressive indeed. I do think the ball flight was a touch high, and certainly the launch angle was a touch high, so probably could get a bit more out of that if I lofted down to 9 degrees. But I was fitted for the Callaway Epic Sub-Zero. That was the model out of the two that performed best for me, so I was expecting more from the Callaway Rogue Sub-Zero. So let's have a look at the numbers for the Callaway Rogue Sub-Zero. Now this is in the back weight setting, so you've got 2 adjustable weights here. You've got a 2 gram and a 14 gram. So with the 14 weight gram at the back, see the ball speed stayed the same, the launch stayed the same, but as expected the spin did come down given it's the Sub-Zero version to 2026 RPM. And while the ball flight actually went up a little bit to 42 yards peaking, the carry went up to 275. So got a little bit more performance out of the Sub-Zero in its forgiving setting. You can see I also got more fade bias in terms of total dispersion was 0.2 yards right, whereas with the standard I think it was a couple of yards to the left. So increasing gradually in performance slightly, but let's see if we could get a bit more out of the Sub-Zero with the weight in my preferred setting, with the heavyweight in the front position. And sure enough, you can see I got much better overall performance across the different categories. So while the ball speed was the same, the launch angle came down, the spin came down, the ball flight came down, and the carry distance went up only by a yard. We're talking marginal increases here, but you can see that's where I've really maxed out in terms of the three settings. 276 yard average carry, very, very impressive indeed. Now, while the performance of the Rogue Sub-Zero was especially impressive, I do think actually I could get a bit more out of this driver if I dial in a bit more with the specs. But we're going to do that in another video. We're going to do Callaway Rogue Sub-Zero up against Epic Sub-Zero and really dive into the specs a little bit more and get dialed in terms of the launch conditions. I think if I could loft down to 9 degrees, which I could do, I probably would get more out of it. But I was just doing a standard 10-degree test across all the different Rogue heads to see the differences in performance between the three, and I think there was a pretty obvious, as expected really, the differences between the three heads. The Rogue standard was pretty good, but the Sub-Zero model was better suited to my mid to fast swing speed. I think I average about 108 miles an hour of clubhead speed, so the Sub-Zero is definitely the one for me, and in that low spin setting I got the most out of it. If you're perhaps a mid-speed swinger, you could potentially get more from the Rogue model. I'd say there's definitely a difference in sound and feel too. I'd say the Callaway Rogue Sub-Zero compared to the Epic Sub-Zero is a slightly louder sound, but it's also a bit harder as well. It's a firmer feeling driver than the Epic Sub-Zero, and for me I quite like that. For me it felt a little bit more powerful than the Epic, so I'll definitely choose the Rogue over the Epic in terms of sound and feel. The other thing I've noticed that I would say definitely that the distance consistency of the Rogue was better than Epic, so I'd say the drop off in performance on mishits was definitely less with the Rogue compared to Epic. So I think you're just getting more consistently high performance with the Rogue, and obviously it's slightly larger in profile. I think the forgiveness levels were much better with Rogue compared to Epic. I'd say it's definitely noticeable in terms of directional control and distance consistency as well. So there you have it. I hope you found that review of the Callaway Rogue and Rogue Sub-Zero drivers helpful. They have a retail price of £469, so the same as Epic when it came out last year, but for my money you're getting a little bit more performance with the Rogue and a slightly better sound and feel. We're only talking marginal improvements, but I do think Rogue is a slight improvement on Epic. But make sure you check out my direct comparison with Rogue and Epic drivers coming very soon. We'll do another video on that, diving more into the specs and the details and the performance that you can get with both drivers. But for now, from West Hill, it's goodbye.